When we picture the epitome of male masculinity, we may often think of someone who looks something like this. Or maybe we think of it as someone who looks like a Roman centurion. Perhaps our mental image is a little different. We may think of a soldier going off to fight to save his nation, or an entrepreneur who just started his own business. Now, I want to draw your attention to something that's similar in these two photos. There's a level of familiarity and physical affection in them that's different from more modern photos like the two that were first shown. Now, keep this in mind when we look at a picture of a military unit from World War I compared to a military unit from 2020, or perhaps basketball team pictures. Here's one from the 1890s versus the 1960s. These photos illustrate the same growing problem in America, that men from a multitude of backgrounds are growing more distant from one another and are no longer forming the same emotionally connected relationships that they once did. And this negatively impacts both our men and our women. And we're going to look at this in two main points today. First, how we got here, and second, how this affects us. So how did we get here? Well, this is directly tied to the rise of sexual orientation as an identity. In many circles, men can be seen as either gay or feminine if they engage in physical affection or emotional connection. This has directly stemmed from the LGBTQ movement. However, this movement isn't what it is today, or it hasn't always been what it is today. In fact, prior to World War I, people didn't see who you were attracted to as the basis of your identity. And the term homosexuality wasn't even coined until the 1870s. Then, at the turn of the 20th century, it transformed from simply being part of who you were into the fundamental basis for your identity. The word transformed from something you did into something that you are. Condemned by some and accepted by others, it didn't become what it was today until much later. In this atmosphere, one of extreme vocal disapproval, combined with one that pushed men towards accepting it as the basis of their identity, has created an atmosphere where men have been driven away from anything that might be appearing as homosexual in nature. Interestingly, though, this was specific to Western culture. In Africa and the Middle East, there was and remains a strong disapproval of homosexuality. And while there's certainly a negative stigma attached to being gay itself, they maintain the casual affection and deep connections that the West once had. So we have to ask ourselves a critical question: what is different? Well, these two regions did not adopt the same negative vocal backlash that the West did, nor did they adopt the identity framework that the left did. We all know what the liberal position is on the issue, that gender and sexual orientation is supposed to be celebrated in an identity. Now, this isn't everyone who considers themselves liberal, but it's certainly big enough to be influential and the most radical. And culture tends to shape itself around those radicalized opinions. But what is the equivalent of this for the Christian right? Well, a couple of years ago, I was competing in a national tournament with an old partner of mine. At that national tournament, we had a disagreement about physical affection. At the award ceremony of that tournament, I had my arm slung across the shoulders of another guy. Something you wouldn't even think twice of if you knew me personally. And after I went home, I didn't think anything of it either, until my family received a phone call alleging that I was gay for this simple interaction, and then later terminating the partnership. Now, there's such an allegation in a league that has always encouraged emotional depth and connection within relationships shocking. Because when we make allegations such as this, we discourage any emotional connection and vulnerability whatsoever. But this has become the conservative Christian position as of late, of never giving the appearance of male intimacy. And this position, combined with the liberal one that pushes men towards accepting it as the basis of their identity, has created a harmful dichotomy where male affection has been cast as almost taboo. And we may be tempted to chalk this up to simply nature, as boys being boys. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, according to New York University research, children from both genders display remarkable emotional and social skills at a young age. It's as they begin to grow up and culture begins to push these social norms upon the children that they lose these skills. What culture has seemed to fail to grasp of the difference between physical intimacy and romantic intimacy is one that the ancient Greeks well recognized. They had three terms for love: eros, phileo, and agape. While one certainly did refer to love of a sexual nature, the other two referred to the love of family and the love of friends. But culture has forgotten this, and that's exactly what C.S. Lewis wrote about in his book, The Four Types of Love, saying that, quote, "Those who cannot conceive eros as friendship as a substantive love, but only as a disguise of eros, betrays the fact that they've never had a friend," end quote. Culture's inability to distinguish itself between romantic friendships and romantic relationships has hurt everyone involved. It's taken both a serious mental and physical toll on the health of our men. According to a survey conducted by the Center on American Life, the number of men who reported having no close friends tripled from 1990 to 2020. And even among those who did report having a close friend, 80% reported that they received no emotional connection to them. Men no longer form healthy relationships, and this has caused significant degradation of our men's emotional health, which was later confirmed by research done by the Journal of Counseling Psychology, which found that men who endorse traditional masculine norms tend to experience higher rates of anxiety, depression, and social isolation. The belief that showing affection or emotional connection is either gay or feminine has translated to record levels of depression and suicide in the United States, which resulted in a CDC report that found 79% of suicides within the United States are committed by a man. And it hasn't just had an emotional toll as well, but also a physical one. Boston University School of Public Health found that low social connectedness carries mortality risks equal to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. The same effect has also been observed in hamsters as well. Social connection is important, yet men consistently neglect this because of societal pressures. But it also affects many of the opposite gender as well. Men are no longer romantic. According to The Guardian, in order to replace male friendships, men began to turn to male-female friendships. While this isn't inherently a problem and male-female friendships can certainly be beneficial, the problem arises with how men have entered into these relationships. The society that has stopped all emotional and physical connection between men has translated into a society where all physical intimacy has replaced all emotional intimacy. Sociologist Dr. Lisa Wade, in her book American Hookup, argues that as culture has normalized casual sex and discouraged male connection, the result is a purely transactional experience. And it doesn't just apply to casual flings either, but also deep, serious, committed relationships. According to the University of Chicago, low emotional connectedness and vulnerability for men leads to increased strain upon the women, which leads to burnout and stress within any given relationship. And one needs to look no further than our current marriage and divorce rate to find this to be true, with a marriage rate of just 46% and a divorce rate of above 50%. In fact, later research done by Stanford found that the main driver behind this is actually men's inability to form and sustain emotionally grounded connections. Men are designed to have deep relationships, yet because of societal pressures and fear of being labeled a certain way, they no longer do so. When Jesus walked upon the earth, he did so surrounded by a group of men that ate together, laughed together, and wept together. When Jesus greeted or left his disciples, he would often give them a kiss upon the cheek or the forehead. He designed us to support one another. He designed us to love one another. He designed us for a brotherhood, and yet society has slowly stripped this ability away from our men.